Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Oh boy, here we go. People wanted a video about me talking about the Xenologue, aka the Engage DLC. So here we go. In this video, I'm gonna try to summarize my thoughts on the DLC as best as I can. It's not gonna be easy because I have a lot of things to say, but I'm gonna try my best. So make yourself comfortable, and let's get started, shall we? So right off the bat, this was a DLC that I said I would never ever play. And I guess I have no principles because I decided to play it anyway. And I was warned that this was going to be a jarring experience, and it was. It really was. But not quite in the way that I thought. You see, I thought this was just going to be a train wreck. Like, I thought it was just going to be Engage being Engage. Cringe, awful story, terrible game decisions, incredibly bad dialogue. And there was some of that for sure, but there was also other parts where I was pleasantly surprised. And again, as with many other things that Engage, like I said during the Sombron rant that I had, I feel like we actually came pretty close to greatness in certain aspects of this DLC. There was definitely parts of this that was revolutionary, like the boss fight at the end, and some of the maps. They almost struck gold, I think, but it was just ruined by so many other bad decisions, as tend to be the case with modern Fire Emblem. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the story. I'm going to be going through each chapter, give my opinions on them, and then, of course, I'm going to give my opinions on the plot twist at the end and everything. But first things first, the first thing I want to say about this DLC is that story-wise, it suffers from one of my absolute least favorite tropes when it comes to modern writing, and that is the crypticness of it all. So basically how this DLC explains its story is, don't worry about it. Okay? Why is Malelir here? Why is he bringing you to the mirror dimension? Don't worry about it. Just don't overthink it. Just go and have fun. It's a mirror dimension. Everyone's opposite. It's gonna be fun. Just try it. Right? This game is being very cryptic in its writing. Ooh, I can't explain everything now. Ooh, you just gotta listen. You just trust me, bro. Just go to this alternate dimension. The game doesn't want to explain how any of this happens. It just does. And it asks you to not take it too seriously. And part of me can respect that. I just wish they went about it in a bit of a different way. As I demonstrated many times on stream, writing overly cryptic dialogue is something that even the most amateur level of writer can do. And they do that in hopes that you might think that they sound intelligent, that they are so deep and that there's like some hidden meaning that you might decipher, while the truth is they're just using the cryptic writing to hide the fact that the plot is kind of bad and shallow. You know, but they add some cryptic lines at the start of every chapter and suddenly it got you feeling all like, ooh, mysterious. But there's no mystery here. The mystery is they wanted to make a DLC with a mirror dimension where everyone is opposite. That's the only mystery. You know, that's what they wanted to do, and that's what you get. So, if you're female Malelir, you meet Malelir, and the opposite is true. Of course, if you play Malelir, you meet female Malelir here, and then they're like, please come save my world, where everything is opposite. And so you do. That's all the setup you really need for this kind of DLC. Now, I will say one thing. Okay, so you are quickly introduced to these two new characters, and they're going to be your companions throughout this entire DLC. Two Fell Dragons, siblings, Nell and Nil. And, yeah, they're controversial, alright. At least the brother is very controversial for reasons that I really didn't think would happen when I entered this DLC. But I will say one thing. I will take these two over Fram and Clam any day, okay? If we had Nell and Nil as the two first characters we met in the main story of Engage, I think a lot of people would have liked it a lot better. Yeah, Nil is a little annoying, but I mean, Nell is pretty cute, and like, these two are a much better pair to wake up to than Fram and Clan. And one thing I realized about this DLC, and that one of the reasons why I actually didn't hate the story as much as I thought, is there's very little avatar worship in this one. Most of the characters you meet kind of treat you just like a normal person. I mean, they're obviously very curious about the fact that you're a Divine Dragon, because the Divine Dragon in their world died, but, like, Nell hates you. And Nil is like, he doesn't hate you, but he certainly doesn't worship you at every turn either. And I realized that one of the reasons that is, like, so refreshing. All you needed to do was just remove some avatar worship, and boom, the story feels immediately a lot better. So like, at least going into this hack, writing-wise, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Like, I thought it was fine. Like, the dialogue was okay. I was kind of curious about the concept of, you know, going to another world and stuff like that. So right off the bat, the DLC actually wasn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be. But then, of course, you get into the gameplay. Yeah, I'm going to go through each of the chapters, and I'm going to talk about them in succession. Alright, so you start up chapter 1, and we, of course, have to talk about the elephant in the room. I don't know what they were thinking on this one, but every single one of your characters have their class restored to their classic one. Like, basically, my Goldmary was a great knight, now she's a hero, right? Not only that, their inventories are set. You can still trade them around, but you have a limited set of inventory to work with. So, this decision, I think, was one of the most unpopular decisions in the DLC. This is something that everyone was talking about. And I get it. I get the frustration. This is probably one of the worst decisions they could have made. I understand why they did it. They did it because they wanted more control of the power level of your group. Obviously, everyone is scaled to the same level, and you don't get any experience in this DLC, so they know exactly how strong each party member is. But for some weird reason, they allowed you to keep your skills. So, like, my Goldmary had pair up, for example, so she never took like assisted strikes. But they let you keep your skills, but everything else is, like, taken away from them and reverted back to their class defaults. Now, of course, like, the units are still based on their actual stats, so, like, Goldmary is still going to be a very tanky hero, for example, but you get to keep very little of your original units. You get to play units that are kind of predetermined for you. You can swap their inventory around, but you have very limited inventories to work with. Furthermore, your inventory resets at the end of each chapter, so there isn't really a point in conserving your uses or anything like that. It also makes treasure chests feel completely useless, and there was a very easy way they could have fixed this. They could have just made it so that what the treasure you loot in the Xenologue goes to your main convoy in the thumbnail. That's all they needed to do. But it didn't. Again, they were close to hitting greatness with some of these design decisions, but a few bad ones just ruined the whole DLC, personally. So it really doesn't feel good that you don't really get to use your own units. Like, they get to keep their skills, but they don't get to keep any of their cool classes that you've given them. So many of the skills that they have doesn't make sense for them anymore. You get to play around with emblem rings, of course, but and they do retain their bond ranks, which is nice, but it's just a weird middle ground. Just go one or the other way. Either just let us use our original units as we see fit, or make them completely static, including their inventories, right? Like, if you really want full power over how each unit is, lock their inventories. Go all the way in one direction or all the way in another. Don't do this like half and half, where you kinda let us use our units, but kinda not. Doesn't feel very good. Also, no experience really makes this DLC feel awful to play. Like, I understand that they didn't want to let us use this to grind our units, but it just feels so bad to not level up, man. It feels like you just kind of have to go through the motions, you know? And so I wasn't a big fan of that. Alright, so how is the actual chapter itself? I actually liked it. You face off against these wolves, and they're very scary. Whenever they attack one of your units, they reduce your max HP by 5, and you have to alleviate that with a restart staff. But it means that no matter how tanky your units are, they're going to be gradually worn down by these wolves. And they're also backup units, so they will, like, attack when other wolves attack. They're also very fast. And this map, honestly, was one of my favorites in the entire DLC. It felt like a big puzzle. You had to use the terrain against the oncoming wolves. Personally, I felt like I really had to use dragon veins to really keep these wolves at bay. I had to use the fire vein, the ice vein. It was actually pretty good. Like, yeah, it was difficult. I started off playing on Maddening because I really wanted to see just how bad it really was. A lot of people warned me not to go Maddening, but I'm actually kind of glad I did, because, you know, if I had more time to play this DLC, I don't think I would have minded, like, trying to figure out Maddening on all maps. But I started out with at least with the 3 first chapters on Maddening, and I actually had a pretty good time. Like, it really felt like I had to use my resources properly. Of course, it was very frustrating that Allure was now unpromoted with 4 move. That was annoying. And of course, we have to talk about this guy right here, Nil. This guy, oh my goodness. So, spoiler alert, and I'm assuming that, most of you guys who watch this video have played the DLC, or maybe you just don't care. Nil is weak in the story and in gameplay, and the reason why he's weak is he's pretending to be weak. He's like kind of the deceptive ruse, But the dude has 4 base speed, and he gets one-rounded by everything on the map, and it is so annoying. The fact that you have to baby this guy around for 6 chapters is so frustrating. And I understand that he's supposed to be this way, and I can kind of respect them for, again, I have often said that I like it when the unit stats matches their personality, right? I like telling a story with stats, and that's what they're doing here. They're giving you a weak unit. He feels very useless because he's supposed to be. You're supposed to baby him, but it's annoying. It's annoying to have to baby this useless unit. It feels like they just stuck Sophia from Fire Emblem 6 into your party, and now you have to drag him around. If he dies, it's a game over, so you have to use a time crystal every time he dies, and it just doesn't feel good. So, again, I commend them for being ballsy enough to actually, do something like this for the sake of the story. But in my opinion, it probably could have been done a little bit better. I think he shouldn't have been one-rounded. Maybe just, make it so that every unit barely kills him. At least that way, it feels like you have to keep him protected, but at least he won't die as soon as a single unit gets within his range. So that's how I would have done it personally. But I will say, aside from that, Chapter 1 was actually quite enjoyable. I liked it. It was, it felt like a puzzle. I felt like I had to use my resources to deal with the wolves. They were very scary. I had to kind of find a nice balance between using the Restore Staff to cure the HP removal that they did, and also, doing enough damage to them to kill them. It was nice. Honestly, I would probably rate this first chapter like a solid 6 or 7 out of 10. I thought it was a really well done map. You can only really do this if you have static stats in your units, right? Because if anyone is able to enter a map like this, they can probably trivialize it by being over-leveled. Even if you scale the wolves, it's going to be hard to find a sweet spot where they're just strong enough to do what you want them to do, but they don't just get fails rolled. So yeah, a solid map, actually, and a good opener to the DLC. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. And then we proceed onwards to Chapter 2, which takes place in Fire, and we get to meet Celestia of the Four Winds. Haha, get it? They're not, they're not evil in this world. I personally think that whoever made this DLC just wanted to give the player an excuse to marry Sephia. I really, really do think this was one of the reasons why they made this DLC. They wanted you to be able to S-rank Dragon Mommy. That's literally it. So, Chapter 2, in my humble opinion, is probably one of the most boring ones. So in this map you face Alfred and Celine, and they're also opposite. But the problem I had with this map is that it just felt kind of like it dragged on. It was too big in my opinion. It didn't really feel like it had any purpose. You start off split off, but there's no... As with 99% of maps in Engage that does this, I actually rather 100%. There's no point. You just gather everyone up anyway. If you're gonna force the player to split up, force them to split up, right? Don't... there's a hallway where you can just join up your forces together, so why wouldn't you? If you let the player not split up, they're gonna not split up. It really is that simple, because it's hard to split up. It's hard to fight battles on 2 fronts. You cut your resources in half. If you gather everyone together in a nice little clump, then it's a lot easier to deal with whatever challenges. But yeah, this map I really did not like at all. This map felt slow, clunky. It was easy, even on Maddening, but it felt completely directionless in my humble opinion. Music was, of course, very nice. I will say, generally speaking, music in this DLC was really, really on point. And it was nice to play around with Sephia a little bit, get to use her as a unit. And this chapter had some fun moments. I got some good override moments with Goldmary and whatnot. But from a pure gameplay perspective, this was by far one of my least favorite chapters. Actually, that may not be fair. There's another chapter coming up later that might be worse, but this one just felt boring. There was nothing to it. No puzzles, no nothing. This was bland and uninspired in my opinion. 4 out of 10, maybe 3 out of 10, honestly. Did not like this one bit. Then we have Chapter 3, and this one sees you going to Brodia. You're fighting on this giant bridge, and And this is where the difficulty really ramps up on maddening difficulty. There are so many reinforcements on this map. And this is where I started to really feel the annoyance of the balancing in this particular DLC. My units felt fine, but the extra units that I got did not. This is where Nil starts to become a massive liability. He gets one-shot by everything, there's flyers everywhere, it's almost impossible to keep him out of danger. Nell is kind of useless as well, she doesn't really do a whole lot. But by far, the most annoying aspect of this particular chapter are the two, like, force characters in Celestia and Gregory. Their hit rates are so bad. Like, they have like 50 to 60% hit on all the flyers. Like, you get Gregory, who's a wind mage, and he's supposed to be like good at sniping flyers with his Elwyn Tome. He actually does quite a lot of damage to them, but his hit rates are like in the 50s to 60s. Now, of course, you can use Celestia's personal skill to give him a 20% boost, but that requires her to kill someone, which is not easy to set up. So, yeah, this chapter was insane. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say in a good way. So, this chapter was actually one of the first to feature the Mage Artillery class, which is like a new class that you can get. And they're basically like, they're Siege Drums. They're Siege Drum. It's like a pure Siege Drum class. And I didn't really feel like they added that much because they didn't do a lot of damage to me. But the amount of reinforcements that this map sent down my throat was absolutely disgusting. Like, towards the later half of this chapter, I feel like you just get bogged down by like 50 flyers. It's absolutely lunacy. So this chapter certainly kicked it up a notch, but again, it did a thing that I really despise, and that's the fact that the siege tomes on the bridges just slows everything down to a crawl. Because you don't really want to advance into siege tomes while there's a lot of scary units around, because they're unreliable. You don't exactly know how much damage they're going to deal to you. So the player will naturally just kind of not advance. So if you're going to have siege tomes on a map, you need to force the player forward. Otherwise, they're just going to stay put. Now, you can't... These guys have unlimited durability, so they're not going to... You can't wait them out. But what you can do is you can still wait out the reinforcements, yeah? And that's kind of what I tried to do, and I kind of failed spectacularly. So this was like one of the first fails of the evening. I actually had to give up. And this was the end of my first stream. I was really exhausted. I decided I was going to come back and clear this map on hard mode, which is what I did. And oh my god, the jump from from maddening to hard mode in this DLC is like one of the craziest jumps I have ever seen in terms of difficulty. Maddening feels legitimately like it's like one of the hardest DLCs I've ever played. Hard mode was a walk in the park by comparison. I really wish that they weren't so far apart. This is a big problem I have with many games where the top difficulty is way too hard and the next hardest difficulty is way too easy. XCOM does this too, by the way. Like the hardest difficulty in XCOM, absolutely brutal. The difficulty below that, absolutely cakewalk. I really wish they could find a balance. Like, I personally would be happy with a difficulty that was right in the middle of maddening and hard mode on this map. Like, find the middle ground. That's where you set the difficulty on hard mode. I think that would have been good. And you can keep normal mode a face roll for those who just want to like breeze through the story. That's fine. So yeah, didn't really like this map much. It's not my like least favorite map, but it's definitely not a good one. I'll give it like a solid 4 out of 10 probably. It was okay, but way too many reinforcements, and the gimmick of the artillery just kind of slows everything down to a crawl. Really bad. And then we arrive at Xenologue 4, the fourth part of the DLC, and this one was really cool. This one did something that I've been wanting to see in Fire Emblem for a long time, and we have seen it, but never quite like this. So here you actually come into a battle between two sides. You have Ivy's side on the left, and then you have Tamara's side on the right. And you're actually seeing yellow units fight red units, and you fight both of them, which I loved. I think this was probably one of the most creative maps in the DLC, maybe aside from the last one. I've always wanted a Fire Emblem map like this, where two sides are fighting each other, and you come in and you kind of try to snipe both commanders, which is a really cool thing. I mean, like, Revelation almost did this, but they just ended up making you fight both sides instead. Like, I'm talking about the first map of the Revelation route. Because, of course, not every Fire Emblem game has the mechanics for yellow units. That's something you gotta add. And I think this DLC added that specifically. I don't think yellow units show up anywhere else in the main story. So this one definitely felt nice.
You get a new hound in this chapter in Madeline, and she, just like her predecessor, she's also kind of terrible. Her hit rates are like 60%, but at least she's tanky, which is nice. So, yeah, I actually really enjoyed this map. I really enjoyed this map. This was probably one of the more creative maps of the series. The fact that you have two armies fighting against each other really changes the way you approach it. And I just kind of wanted to try and snipe both commanders and not deal with too many units, which is exactly what I did. So this one gets a good rating from me. I think 6 or 7 out of 10 in terms of like pure enjoyment. This was really nice. Of course, I don't know what this map is like on Maddening, probably really hard. But on hard mode, it actually felt like a decent challenge. I liked it a lot. Oh boy. Xenologue 5. My goodness, this map was quite a train wreck. So here, your Alir gets captured. She's essentially a green unit hidden inside a cell, and you gotta keep her alive with physics saves as she gets bombarded by the outside. Meanwhile, this is where Nil reveals himself to actually be a traitor. He's like, oh, ha, 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 I'm actually evil. Oh, the 4 base speed was just a ruse. And I was trying to kill the sister. And this map is another, like, this is a complicated map to do, right? Because you have so much going on. You have an indoor map that forces you to split. Well, you don't have to. I started splitting at the start, only to realize that why the hell do I care about treasure chests? They don't matter. So I just, in the end, I decided not to split, which is the right choice. But there's a lot of stuff going on here. Firstly, you can't use your Alirs. If you're kind of dependent on your avatar, that can be a bad feeling for most people. But I don't actually mind taking away a player's avatar for one chapter. I think it can actually be a cool challenge. Kind of similar to how Engage sometimes just takes away your rings, you know? But the part about this map that I really hated was the fact that you have this like mini battle going up in the top right with Nil and Nell fighting, and you're supposed to just stall. And you can do that with the Corin ring. You can create ice vents and stuff like that, but there wasn't really much thought put into it. You know, Nell has like 3 elixirs in her inventory, so she can kind of just keep drinking them. But I personally would have liked it if they forced a particular ring on her and like made it a bit more of a puzzle. Because stalling out a boss while the rest of your army is like fighting to reach you is actually a pretty cool concept. But you need to have a bit more control over the character's power level. So I think they could have done something much better here than just chugging elixirs. I think they should have had some kind of puzzle where you change the terrain similar to the Corin ring and tried to keep Nil at bay. So lots of wasted potential here. This map was a slog to play. My goodness, these ruins just felt like they went on forever and ever. The enemies were not very fun to fight. There were lots of artillery, which were just annoying. Yeah, this map was a big flunk for me. It also took forever to get through. This was by far, I think, the longest map, even longer than the final one. I think I spent almost 2 hours in here, and that was with animations off. So I feel really sorry for people who went through this slog on Maddening with animations on. That must be like an entire evening of playtime right here. So yeah, this map, I didn't like it. Those miasma and random tiles that didn't really feel like they did much. It just an amalgamation of good ideas in theory, but it feels I don't think they really had the time to make something of it. You know, it just didn't work. It just didn't work. Also, if you move Nell too far to the right hand side, you just pull the boss and you have to reset, which is the game never tells you this. Chat had to tell me about it. They were like, "Yeah, you fucked up. You got to go back now." I was like, "What? Really?" Yep, you got to go back. Wow. Nice of the game to tell me. At least I have Divine Pulse, but man. Yeah, this was like a 2 out of 10. This is probably the worst map of the DLC. Very sad. And then we arrive at long last to fell Xenologue 6, the final boss battle against Nil. And this is the whole reason I even want to make this video, because this, in my opinion, is probably one of the best boss fights I have ever seen in Fire Emblem. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. That being said, I never played it on Maddening. Maybe it is on Maddening, but on hard mode it certainly had problems. But this feels like they put a lot of effort into this boss fight. This is what I like to see. My only complaint about this boss fight is it was a little too long. But aside from that, I greatly enjoyed this map. So here you have a dragon that flies from platform to platform, destroying the terrain as he goes, summoning Corrupted, and then if you don't kill the Corrupted, he absorbs them to get stronger, and you have to race the dragon to the finish. chef's kiss. What a boss battle. This made playing the rest of the DLC worth it, in my opinion. Just experiencing this boss battle. This is what I wanted a final boss in Fire Emblem to be all along. I mean, isn't that ironic? I made that rant about final bosses sucking, and then, you know, people were like, you should play the full Xenologue then, because you're gonna like it. And I did. I really did. This battle was so cool. I had to really think. I had to deal with enemies coming up from all sides. I had to constantly balance my resources between trying to prevent the dragon from growing too strong and also like moving forward. I think they probably could have rushed me a bit more, but then again, I was playing on hard. But this was a phenomenally well executed boss battle. I have always wanted a Fire Emblem boss that destroys the terrain, and this is exactly what we got here. And it felt amazing. Again, it wasn't perfect. I didn't really like the last part of it. I feel like the boss felt a little, again, like he didn't really do much. You just kind of like blasted him down. But this is kind of what Sombron should have been. I really liked this fight also took place in the Somniel. There's something really cool about that, like seeing all the places that you're used to going around, and now you're like fighting in the plaza and stuff like that. Really, really cool idea. So, you know, again, could they have done it better? Absolutely, they could have. But this, to me, shows that they actually are capable of making a good final boss fight for Fire Emblem if they want to. And I kind of want to go back and try this on Maddening, because I've heard that on Maddening, this is the most insane map ever. Like, absolutely the hardest boss battle ever, and it's not even close. And I believe you, because I struggled on hard mode. So I can only imagine Maddening mode is going to be quite insane here. But yeah, this is like an 8 or 9 out of 10 for me at least. The only thing that kind of drags this battle, as I said, is like the final part of it. The final part where you fight against Nil in the center here around the Somniel. This was like, I guess getting to him is the most dangerous part, but for me, like, he didn't really feel that impactful. He was very hard to bring down. Like, his durability was insane. Like, most of my party didn't do much damage to him at all. Only like Alir and some of my other characters were actually capable of hurting him. So he certainly felt but it was a little bit more of a slog to bring him down, honestly. Like, it was like, just gotta bring him down slowly. He did some AoE attacks that didn't really end up doing much, so definitely could have worked harder on the final phase of this fight. But getting to him, man, that was fun. That was really, really fun. So again, as I said, this boss fight is the reason you want to play the DLC. You want to experience this boss fight. It is one of a kind. And I hope that they take this knowledge from this boss fight and they apply it to the next Fire Emblem game, so we actually will get a good final boss for once. They're definitely learning, which is good to see. Good fight. Alright, so now I just want to give my thoughts on the ending of the DLC, like the plot twist that no one asked for, but the plot twist that we got. So, of course, towards the end, Nil is defeated, and he's like, oh, you gotta kill me. And then turns out that, like, Nell sacrifices herself or something to break a curse. And then they both live, essentially. It's not a very good summary of it, but honestly, like, this was so all over the place. You know, I said at the start of this video that the writing wasn't that bad, but man, did it fall apart in the final 2 chapters. Nil is just such a confusing villain. I understand that the whole gimmick is that he's like brainwashed by Sombron. And he's like just trying to live up to his father's ideals. And he's very misguided and a little bit crazy, but personally I think he's all over the place. I didn't like him as a villain at all. I felt like he wasn't coherent at all. And I feel like this cop-out move where like Nell kills herself and then he revives her and then they come back to the Somniel later. It just feels kind of hollow, you know? Like, none of this really mattered, you know? I feel like at least someone should die. I mean, I guess Mauvier died, you know, after using the warp staff. So, we lost Mauvier, or no, everyone else survived, though. See, I really didn't like the plot twists with Nell killing herself and both of them surviving and eventually coming to join you in the Somniel. It just doesn't feel very good. And I thought it was a pretty unnecessary plot twist. Now, in the end, you do get the three wins. You get Nell, you get all these characters. But I think one of the biggest sins of this DLC, personally to me, is the fact that you have to play it every single time you want these characters. unlike the Tree Houses DLC, where you got the Ashen Wolves on every consecutive playthrough, you have to play through this thing every time you want these characters, which is just so bad. And they're also static. They don't scale. Again, there's so many weird decisions made with this particular DLC. Like, I don't get what they were thinking. Like, after playing it once, they should have permanently come into your Somniel, like maybe at certain intervals. So yeah, really, really weird decision making from the makers of this DLC. I'd say this final chapter, probably one of the weirdest ones, and I really didn't like it a lot. I remember just being like, oh my god, what is going on here? What a weird ass DLC this was. So yeah, I don't really know what else to say. I feel like I've ranted enough about this. It was an experience to play it. I don't necessarily mind having played it. It has certainly given me a lot of perspective on things, but I think we can conclude that DLC still is in a pretty bad spot in Fire Emblem, right? I really, really hope that we get some decent DLC one day. I feel like every single DLC that we get is pretty garbage, and this was no different. There was things about this that I really liked, though. The music, I don't mind the mirror dimension if it's done right. You know, kind of cool to see male Alir and female Alir interact. But in the end, this really fell flat on its nose, didn't it? So yeah, I think I've ranted. I've ranted for more than 30 minutes about this DLC now, so I think I'm going to wrap it up. But I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. Do you think it had redeeming traits? Were there things about this DLC that you liked? Let me hear about it in the comment section below. I think this is probably going to be the last Engage video I make on the channel for a while. I feel like I've done everything I set out to do now. I've done the Iron Man. I did the DLC. I did the video on the DLC. There's going to be actually one more video coming up, and that's the draft race. We're going to do a draft race stream with Axum and Speedwings. But after that, I think we're done with Engage on the channel for a while, guys. But it was interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I didn't always at times. But I guess I'll see you again soon. Thank you for watching my incoherent rant. Bye-bye.